On the evening of September 30th, 1992, 20-year-old swimming coach Chiho Anjitsu did not come home from work. Her worried mother and sister decided to go to the swimming school where Chiho works. To their relief, Chiho's car is still in the car park, but when they look inside the car, they get the shock of their lives. This story is about 20-year-old swimming coach Chiho Anjitsu. She is the second of three daughters, and the family lived in the town then called Mado in Ishikawa Prefecture. Chiho's love for swimming did not come from a stranger. Her father was vice president of the swimming society in their town. At her high school, she was already captain of the swimming club and had won many trophies there. She got along well with her former classmates and with her now fellow colleagues at her swimming school. They described Chiho as sweet, lively, active, and smart. Immediately after she completed her studies, Chiho started working as a swimming coach at the local swimming school. On September 30th, 1992, as usual, Chiho drove her Mitsubishi Mirage Fabio 6 to 7 kilometers from her family home to work. She brought homemade spaghetti for lunch, which she otherwise ate between classes, but the swimming school had provided lunch for the staff as a surprise on this day. So she ate the spaghetti after her last shift around 6:45 p.m. in the staff members' room. Just before 7:15 p.m., Chiho drove off from the car park to go home, but here is one of the first things that was noticed. One of the staff members who were interviewed later said that Chiho drove out of the east gate instead of the west gate, where she otherwise drove out to go home. Chiho's family was close, and whenever Chiho came home later, she always called home so that her family would not worry. But this night she did not come home. She also did not tell her family that she had an appointment or that she had some other reason for coming home later. They also knew that the swimming school would close at 10 o'clock, so they were worried about where Chiho was, and Chiho's mother called the swimming school. They asked Chiho's colleagues where she was, and they told her that she got into her car to go home. They then contacted Chiho's father, who was drinking with his colleagues, to get home and told him that Chiho was not home yet. When it was 11 o'clock, Chiho's mother thought it was too late and went to investigate herself. She went with Chiho's elder sister to the swimming school to start looking. Chiho's younger sister stayed home, so if Chiho got home, she would be there. When they arrive at the swimming school, they see Chiho's car parked in car park 2, where she always parks her car. Looking into the car, they saw Chiho sitting reclined on the passenger seat, making it look like she was asleep. They opened the door to wake her up, but when they touched her, their worst nightmare came true. Chiho was sitting lifeless in her car. Panicking, she ran to a snack bar that was close by and was still open to calling the authorities. The police came straight to the parking lot. They immediately cordoned off the scene and started investigating what had happened to Chiho. The police soon discover important clues. Her car was parked strangely. The car was partly in parking space number 2, where she normally parks her car, and in parking space number 3, the bumper had been broken by driving into the concrete block that sits at the end of each parking spot. And since Chiho is in the passenger seat, it seems that someone else drove her car, parked it here in a hurry, and made a quick getaway from it. Chiho's purse is still on the back seat of her car, with her wallet, with all her money in it, and the rest of her things are still in it, so the police assume it is not a robbery homicide. The key was still in the ignition, but the engine was not on. But another important clue is that on the outside of the car, the tires and the lower part of the car are covered in mud and grassy remains, which means that the car has been outside the residential area and in a rural area. On Chiho's clothes are also remains of mud, leaves, and blades of grass, and on her neck and face are injuries. Chiho's right shoe had disappeared, and the left shoe was loose from Chiho's foot in the car. There was a cut in Chiho's dungarees she was wearing and a hole in her crotch area, but no injuries were found in this area. The bag with the lunchbox covered this area. The perpetrator probably wanted to cover this so that whoever would walk past Chiho's car would not see the tear in her clothing. Experts called in and explained that the injuries inflicted on Chiho's neck and that extended up to her ears were consistent with suffocation, and in her mouth and throat, blades of grass and leaves had been found. These leaves are important clues to where Chiho has been. Saliva was found on her upper body with blood type AB or B, and under her fingernails they could not find anything. This is likely to have been slapped in her face, knocked unconscious, and she could not fight back. Police are questioning Chiho's colleagues about what happened that night. For instance, one colleague says he saw Chiho's car in the car park around 9 o'clock, so this means the incident must have happened between 7:30 and about 8:45 in time to drive back. The leaves and blades of grass that were found in Chiho's hair were examined by a biologist and a nature expert, and the result was surprising. The leaf comes from the Chinese giant sequoia, or water cypress, a deciduous conifer that is nowadays usually classified in the cypress family. It is considered a living fossil. For a long time it was thought to be extinct, but in 1940s the tree was rediscovered in central China, and it is still rare now. Experts say it did not occur in Japan. They asked the public for help about the tree and the leaf they found and where it might come from, and soon enough tips came within a few interestingly, including an agricultural testing facility where different trees and plants were grown in different conditions. Where the facility was located was also surprising. It was just a few hundred meters from Chiho's house. The police immediately cordoned off the area for investigation. They found tire tracks that matched Chiho's car, and barely 5 meters from the facility entrance was Chiho's right shoe, which seemed to drag traces of Chiho in that direction. Besides that, there was DNA matching Chiho's DNA. And further, they found a few hairs, which later turned out to be from a pompon on a woolen beanie hat, which was worn by many children in Japan. So the police are looking for someone who, themselves or in close proximity, knew about such a beanie hat. They also found a receipt from a petrol station that was paid that night, but unfortunately for them, it is about a couple who lost that receipt, as they had a meeting there in that agricultural testing facility the same night of Chiho's murder, but visited just a little later, between 9:30 and 10. They were present at that facility. They found out that the couple knew nothing about Chiho's case, so they cleared the couple. The Japanese police were divided into two groups, with the first group being at the police station close to where Chiho's body was found, and the other group sitting at Mata Police Headquarters. This did not help the investigation. Communication was poor between the two units. Especially the senior authorities in charge of the police were afraid of leaking information to the media. One of the lead investigators was Torao Nishimura, who later also wrote and published a book on the case called Sorry Chiho. At the beginning of the investigation, over 5,500 people were investigated, but this was reduced to 1,500 quite quickly, and the chief inspectors had a list of 20 main suspects. In Torao's book, he elaborates on the investigation and perpetrators. For instance, he wrote that a prime suspect emerged fairly quickly, whom Torao gave a pseudonym in his book called Yamada. Yamada was also interrogated just after Chiho's murder, but had provided a good alibi in initial discussions with the police. So Yamada appeared less suspicious, but 9 months after the first interrogation, his DNA was examined with the other 19 prime suspects, and Yamada's blood type B was the only one that matched the AB or B blood type from the saliva found on Chiho's body. Because this crime happened in the early 1990s and DNA testing was still at the beginning of its development and the evidence was poorly stored, they could not proceed at this time or any later time with any further investigation with this DNA. But with this information, the police investigated Yamada's alibi again and found out from people who confirmed his initial alibi that it was not correct and that he was not seen between 7:15 a.m. and 8:50 a.m. on the day of the crime. In Torao's book, he gives a theory about what may have happened that night. After Chiho finished her work at the swimming school, Torao suspects that Chiho had an appointment with Yamada in the car park at a restaurant, where Yamada's car was also parked, which was seen by eyewitnesses, and could thus provide his first alibi. Also, because Chiho drove in a different direction from the one towards her house, this seems like a good possibility. And other eyewitnesses have seen a young man in Chiho's car close to this location with Chiho in the passenger seat, but because this eyewitness was a fortune teller, it was not taken seriously. The theory is that Yamada wanted to drive with Chiho to a motel to spend time with her, but Chiho did not want to do that, and then went to the agricultural testing facility, where couples go often because it's in a rural area. They can go in secret and spend time alone there. Once at the facility, Yamada made his advances to Chiho, rejected them, and run away from Yamada. But that made Yamada angry, and he run after Chiho. He attacked Chiho from behind, slapped her against her face, and strangled Chiho with the strap of her dungarees. Yamada probably cuts into Chiho's dungarees at this point, and touched her in a way that left his saliva behind. It is speculated that Yamada then drove the car back to the pool to speed up the discovery of Chiho's body and secure his alibi. He believed that if the body was found at a time when he was in a separate location, he would not be suspected and could be linked to the crime. I should add that this is, of course, all speculation and not officially proven by the Japanese police and judiciary. No one has been officially suspected or charged in this case. The case hit the statute of limitations in 2007, 15 years after the murder, and the case remains unsolved to this day.